Happy Wedding Wednesday, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I say that every week, but it just gets better and better every week. This week, we have two guests joining us. And if you're not familiar with the show, every Wednesday, we have a different topic that is wedding related. And we hope that this is educational to all of our couples and wedding vendor friends that join us. Tonight, we have two guests. They're both photographers that are here in Chicago, two of the best wedding photographers that I know, if I can say so myself. Without further ado, I'd love to bring on Bethany Fritz of Maple Studios and Alain Milotti of Found Light Studios. Hey guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
So happy to be here.
Yeah.
Happy Wednesday. Are you guys drinking anything fun?
Cheers.
Wine?
Water.
What are you drinking, Bethany?
A sparkling rosé.
Oh, nice.
I hope
Water
it doesn't make me burpy though.
Normally it'd be bourbon or something, maybe a Campari drink, but I'm just trying to do water today because it's just one of those days.
Yeah. Hungover from a binging.
Hungover from like almost 40.
Oh, the ragers.
No, not quite.
Well, we've been friends. We're actually, like, the three of us are friends. And it all stemmed from the wedding industry. We've been doing these weekly chats, or we were doing these weekly chats when quarantine hit. And I have to say, the two of you, among our other wedding friends, helped get through those first few months. And I feel like we're kind of headed back in that direction. But so I want to first, get to know both of you guys a little bit about your background. We can talk about how you got into photography and then how you got specifically into wedding photography, and then catch everyone up to speed on how life is now. So Bethany, we can start with you.
Okay.
How did you even get into photography? Like, how did that journey begin?
I would say, like most people, it was an interest of mine when I was younger, all the way through high school, dabbling in the darkroom, making pinhole cameras. But when I went to college, I was studying at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. And I was a little more on the architectural interior design course with a photography interest. And I was minoring in photography. And a lot of my instructors asked me to make it my main focus. And I just, more and more kept realizing that it was what I wanted to do. But, I thought it was going to be more fashion or fine art related, and it definitely did not stay in that category.
No? Did you work in fashion ever?
Briefly.
Lisa.
I actually moved away from New York right before starting an internship at Vogue magazine, and I wanted to move to Chicago more than stay for that. And I did work for a couple of fashion photographers, but I found it to be really challenging because it was very demanding. It was a bit, I hate to say it, but people were really mean to each other.
Where?
Oh. Like how?
In fashion, they would criticize
the industry.
Criticize what other people were wearing, talk about the models right in front of them in a negative way. There was just a lot of body image issues and a fair amount of depression, and it really wasn't an environment that I wanted to stay in.
Alain, did you ever work in fashion?
Not to her extent. Definitely not. No. But like a couple like local brands in Chicago, like models that needed to update their portfolios, or like for a while I did have a semi-consistent client that was doing e-commerce. I was just shooting stuff for the e-commerce website. That's probably the extent of like my fashion stuff. I was just smiling the whole time because Bethany's story of getting into photography is like so much more professional, like legit than mine. So
no, it's not.
Yes, it is. You went to art school in New York. Like, holy crap, So
just to watch what everyone was wearing to school, because they would make their own clothes, and it was really outrageous.
That's funny.
Bethany, do you still shoot in New York?
I don't. When I first started getting into the wedding industry, my first couple of weddings actually were in the New York area, Staten Island, New Jersey, Manhattan, and around. So I went back a couple times for word of mouth referrals, but not really. I mean, it's such a different market, especially in the wedding industry. But fashion has come back in. I mean, I've had friends that have started brands, that have started companies, a girlfriend that had a whole clothing line, and I ended up shooting all the catalog work for her. So it does still peek its head in every now and then.
Yeah, I was never a photographer, but I have a little bit of insight into the fashion world because I lived in New York as well. When did you live there? What years?
Well, I was there from 98 until 2005.
Okay, so that's crazy because we had an overlap.
We could have walked on the same street and not known it.
Wait, you know what? I only had an overlap. I moved there September of 2005.
That's when I moved to Chicago.
Oh, okay.
We literally were
so crazy. I think I've told you this story. This is kind of creepy, but I used to bartend, and there's a guy named Ian. I'm forgetting his last name. And when I was moving to Chicago, I didn't know anyone. I had one girlfriend from college who lived here. And so he's like being nice. He's like, oh, you should look up Bethany Fritz. So I've had you, like, I friend requested you, I think.
That's right.
We were like technically friends on Facebook, but I feel like that means nothing until you really like meet someone.
That's such a funny story. I knew him from working in restaurants all through college, and I guess he remembered that I was here. That's kind of cool that he made the connection, and we would never have known that it would evolve into this friendship.
Bethany, did you?
It's a good story.
You went to school. You just like decided to go to school for photography. Was like, what about leading up to it? Anything? I'm just curious.
I started college for pre-med because that's what I thought crazy. I wanted to do. And
pre-med.
Yeah. Okay. It was really difficult. I was always a good student in high school, and honestly, I was a good student in college, but I think in the beginning I wasn't doing what I really loved. And it was, we all kind of face these struggles where you can do the thing that you do to get a good job, or you can try to find the thing that really ignites you. And I really wanted to be more creative, and I wasn't getting any time in my schedule to take the fun elective classes that I thought college was all about. So I ended up completely derailing my decision and left my school in Virginia. I was at VCU MCV and moved to New York City and picked the little art school that I ended up staying at.
That's crazy. Alain, what did you go to school for?
All this. I was recording industry studies.
Rockstar?
Major, not quite. With a minor in... yes, I did on a completely different level, and I minored in percussion. So,
whoa,
yeah. Did you not know that? Did I ever tell you that, Bethany?
We talked about the drum corps, but I didn't know that you actually studied drumming, percussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I still have like some old like percussion books and stuff like that. But I was too young. I didn't have the discipline to lock myself in a practice room for 6 hours a day and like really do it, So
I want to know like what's up with all our surroundings, like what's up with the guitars on your wall, and then what are those things behind you, Bethany?
Beth, you can go first.
Alain, no.
Me first?
I'll
go first, sure. Well, yeah. Okay, so wait, what did you say? Something instruments?
Show off the instruments.
Show off. So music, I mean, I always thought music was going to be the thing I did because I did it ever since I was really young. I started teaching myself guitar in like 8th grade. I got into percussion going into high school because they didn't have marching piano. Piano is what I played, but I wanted to do music in high school. But anyhow, so I've always had in music. this bass here actually came from I traded it with a guy named David Rothstein, who has a big band in Chicago. He used to be
Yeah.
David's bass. Yeah, and I
Which
had a different
one?
one.
Like
This
that.
it's called a Fender Jazz bass.
Okay.
It's Marcus Miller's signature for anyone that's like a
Good
music nerd
bass.
out there. The red one is funny. My best friend Alex gave it to me. He got it one night at Kingston Mines. A guy was playing it on stage, and it looks like a Fender Strat, but it doesn't have any Fender stuff on it. And my friend thought it was some like rare custom, like super. And the guy's like, "Yo, man, I'll sell it to you for $250." Alex was like, "Yeah." And turns out it's like a piece of crap, like Korean knockoff, like terrible, awful guitar. So I just have it because it looks cool. And then this white Strat here is a better one that I use. So anyhow,
Can you use them? Like, are they usable?
for sure. Except for the red and white one, like you could use it, but like it hasn't been set up or anything in a long time. It stinks. It's kind of worthless right now, so it's fine, But there's a keyboard over here too, and then one more 5-string bass nearby. So
No big deal. Just lots
yeah.
of. I have no instruments. I literally don't even. I have nothing. I'm like looking around as if an instrument will appear.
Having an interest in both can add up, can be a little expensive. Cameras and music gear.
Oh yeah, I have. I wish I could be into like a cheap and expensive hobby because like everything I like is like money and stuff. But so these are not expensive. None of these are. I mean, this one. It's really hard to do this. This one's kind of. It's not expensive, but has like significance. But yeah, there's no like $2,000 guitars or anything like that.
Let me do this. Bethany, what's on your walls behind you? I see photos, I think. And
I cleaned one area of my office, but it's kind of my little corner of women. I have a Make Art Not War poster of Jane Goodall and Iris Apfel. I don't know if you can see that one very well, but she's
there's a reflection, but that's cool.
I love Iris.
Oh,
and then,
does she have the big glasses?
Yep.
I love her.
And then just some pages that I framed from a recent feature in the Knot, and I don't want to be wrong in this, but if I'm correct, I think that was actually the last issue of the Chicago-based Knot magazine. So I felt like it was sort of extra special because they're just going to be nationally based now.
Mm-hmm.
As of when? When did that happen?
I think it was this past summer.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Do you guys both do print advertising at all?
No.
I did it once. It was the biggest stupid waste of money ever. I was so angry with my Knot representative. Just full disclosure. I mean, I don't care. I'm happy to talk about it. It was really.
Call me today.
I was so mad at them. My online listing is fine. Happy with that. But the printing was the dumbest thing. And it was just like this inexperienced young like account rep that didn't really know what she was talking about. And yeah, I was definitely at first proud. It was definitely cool. I actually remember this is so dorky, but I was with my mom. We were in downtown Evanston, and we went to the Barnes and I think it's Barnes and Noble. That I don't know if it's still there or not, but there was one in the rack. I was like, "Hey, Mom, look, like my ad," and it was actually a really nice ad. My graphic design buddy helped me with it, and it was sharp. I mean, it looked really pro. I feel like I was doing them a friggin' favor to have a nice ad in there, and so it was fun to see it, but it didn't really help very much.
I never advertised with the magazines. Honestly, I've looked through so many of them, and I never found other companies advertising that I felt were similar to my style. They were usually more of the big box companies. But I do still very much remember the first time I was ever published. And it was like the tiniest little one little photo of this amazing bride that had this really cool vintage style, and they were featuring her headpiece. And I was up all night, and I ran to the Walgreens to buy copies of it. And it was like on page 385 or something. But it was
It's so
just such a
fun
great
though,
feeling.
getting to
Yeah,
watch.
it's still cool. It's still cool to see your pictures
Yeah.
on grid. Yeah.
We're of a certain age where we still kind of appreciate print, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. Okay, so we started talking about how you both got into photography in general. Bethany, can I ask you first how you landed on weddings and how long you've had your company, and how did you even choose Maypole Studios actually as a name?
That's like 4 questions.
I know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Unfair.
I'm like, bam, 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 bam.
Okay. So I'm a student of photography. So if someone thinks of a photo job, they know I'm studying photography, and I'm most likely cheap because I'm a student. So weddings kind of got thrown at me because one of my girlfriend's cousins was getting remarried on a very shoestring budget on Staten Island. And I shot all film because this was, I'm old enough to live through the digital revolution. So it was like 48 rolls of film. It cost me so much more money.
48
I mean,
rolls of film?
The money I spent developing the film and the time I spent scanning it far outweighs any compensation they gave me. But I wanted to try it. And it was a lot of work. And not, well, I could there's a whole side story I could tell you another time about.
How many frames were on each roll?
36. Yeah, I mean, no, well, actually I was shooting medium format and 35 millimeters. So I had 6 cameras hanging from my neck, and
oh my gosh,
they were all loaded with different things, black and white film. And I hate to say it, but sepia. And then also color. And yeah, I was just sort of running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And it was a hot summer day. It was really awful.
Sepia is when it's brown, right? Because I have this picture of yours.
That's
is
black and white.
This is black and white. That's
sepia.
Nice.
Sepia has been gone for about 20 years.
Okay.
Or
and then there's another. Ooh, I love this. What's the story about this one?
So wonderful, actually. So Ashley is a good friend of mine. I knew her from Starbucks because she was a barista at the Starbucks that I went to almost every day in Wicker Park. And we became friends, and she now works for Home Chef, and she was dating a guy. And I always would tease her. I'm like, if you ever get engaged, you better call me first. You better call me first. And sure enough, she did. And she got married in Miami 2 Januaries ago. And there's a really cool property that's basically got all these wild animals. It's like a sanctuary, and the house you get ready in is very quaint, and there are all these little vignettes. It's really picturesque and kind of a photographer's dream come true.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll get to that later too, where you guys like to shoot. But okay, so I went off on a tangent. You were talking about your first wedding, and you had all these cameras, and Alain was like, "Oh my God, that's so much film." And then,
as terrible as it was, there were a couple of images that we all loved, so there was some takeaway from that. And then there was word of mouth, and she started telling some of her other friends about me. And before I knew it, a year went by, and I probably had 4 or 5 more weddings just from people that knew people. And I still kind of like shooting in the dark. And honestly, I didn't think I would focus on it because this is crazy, but we're living like the wedding industry we have now that's so wonderful and so interesting and nuanced is only something that's happened within the last 10 years, roughly. So before that, like my professors thought weddings were the worst thing in the world. And that if you're a true photographer, you do not shoot weddings. But what's happened is this massive shift with digital photography, social media, sharing photos, Pinterest boards. People have realized that they can personalize their weddings. And I would almost equate it to how film actors back in the day would never have been caught dead on a TV show because that was super beneath them. And now that's where they all want to be. So I feel like wedding photography is that same thing in the wedding world where PDN magazine would never have had a wedding photo on their cover. Now they constantly feature wedding photographers, and all of the big to-do photographers dabble in weddings because it's very creative.
And do you think it has to do with money too? Like, I feel like with actors, they probably thought it was beneath them, but when they realize there's like reruns and stuff.
Oh, totally. Well, there's certainly the financial side of it, and that has shifted in weddings as well because people are buying into a lot more details than they would have before they knew about them, because things like Pinterest and Facebook, they're seeing a lot more about weddings, and now they want like those personalized photos, and they want that really creative photographer or videographer and a great band. And, you know, there's just a totally different approach to planning a wedding. It's great for us because, I mean, there's a lot in my early portfolio I probably wouldn't want to show you guys, but I can still look back 8 years and beyond, and I'm really proud of the work I've done. And I think I've just been given the greatest clients and opportunities to be very creative as a photographer and not feel pigeonholed, even though, you know, there is some things in weddings that are, don't want to say redundant, but, you know, white dress, church,
Sure.
limo.
So you've had Maypole Studios for 8 years?
Actually longer. I started Maypole Studios in 2008.
Okay, so 12 years, so doing the math. And then, Alain, how long have you had Found Light Studios, and how did that transition go from, like, when did you start your company, and why do you name it that? And then we'll get back to why you named yours that.
Brand. Well, I was curious actually when, like, I feel like we're both interviewing Bethany because I'm just curious to learn about my friends. Did you always just like shoot for yourself?
No.
Okay, I was curious.
I worked for a couple of photographers. In fact, when I moved to Chicago, I did something really crazy. I Googled photographers in the Chicago area, and any of them that looked cool or I thought was interesting, whether they were in advertising, fashion, or weddings, I emailed them. I cold emailed them or called them and said, hey, I'm moving to Chicago. I'd love to meet you for coffee or just see what's going on. If you have a job, if you need an assistant, let me know. And I got 3 job offers, which is crazy. And the one that I loved the most was the wedding photographer, Stephen Gross, who I had the pleasure of working with. And he, at that time, was entirely black and white, all rangefinder cameras. And the things that he taught me and the way that he approached weddings from an entirely photojournalistic perspective, because he has a newspaper background, really affected my view of weddings and just how I approach them now too. But then I also worked for a really large company, and that taught me all the things I don't ever want to do with my company.
Oh yeah, and we have to get into that. So okay, before we get into the differences between, I think you guys, I've heard you call it big box and small box. I don't know. We'll talk about that.
Boutique.
But
boutique would be the opposite, I would say.
Yeah. But Alain, how did you land on weddings? At what point?
Yeah, I totally dodged
how long
the
ago
question.
were you like?
Sorry.
Okay.
Tell us your story too.
Well, it's kind of, how much time do we have? Oh my God, half an hour's passed already? Jesus Christ. Okay, so I'll try and make it quick. So for me, I was into photography ever since I was almost like a kid. Bethany, do you shoot Nikon or Canon? I forget.
Canon.
Okay, cool. So when I was in high school, same thing. So
cool.
My parents got me a Rebel 2000 film camera. That was
the Rebel.
I was in the trail end of like any experience of photography at all.
It was film, right?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is like I never learned anything darkroom. I didn't do any of that stuff. I had that camera. It was funny. My parents wanted the camera. We had like a high school band trip to Europe, and my parents wouldn't let me take the camera. They just bought me because they didn't trust me. So the school gave me this Olympus like piece of crap that was like the lens and a camera together. It wasn't interchangeable. But it was still kind of big. It was a chunky thing. And I took a ton of rolls of film and I shot so much, but at the time I didn't give a shit about photographing people. It was all like landscapes and stuff. We fight back and the guy looks like, I forget, he was one of the teachers. He's like, you didn't shoot anybody. What's wrong with you? You shot like 50 rolls. I'm like, I don't know. But I wasn't given any direction. No one told me what to do. Anyhow. So I'd always been into photography ever since I was a kid. I went to college for music, but I think maybe my last 2 years, I dabbled in like the yearbook shooting for stuff. I graduated, and it's actually kind of funny, similar to what you did, Bethany. I graduated. I remember pacing my apartment, being like, I need a job. Like I need to earn money somehow. Don't I? And like I was so immature, and I was so stupid when I was young and I graduated. And I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? It's like creative and like has like a future and like this. I was like, photography, I'm already kind of good at it. Like, okay. So I busted out the yellow pages and I started going down photographers in
Yellow pages.
Indianapolis. Yeah, I know.
That's even more old
And
school than Bethany saying
God,
she
we're
cold
old.
called
I know.
people.
I at least
Yeah.
I have like one old school like one up from her because that's probably the only thing. And I landed on like someone answered and like would talk to me. This guy that photographed. Are you ready for this, Bethany?
Yep.
Marching bands, high school marching
Whoa.
bands. That's all he did, and it was.
I was in the
like,
marching band. Were either of you?
No.
I was drum captain. Hello, senior year, Loyal Academy. Thank you very much. But so what happened? This guy shot marching band. So like from the sidelines, but the main thing was going, driving to like marching band competitions where a bunch of schools would show up and set up scaffolding, like bleachers that like collapsed into a Ford Econoline like creepy van. And he's like, well, we're going to St. Louis this weekend. You want to come with? I'll pay $250. I'm like, sure. So at this time, digital SLRs were really, really new. It was like
Yeah.
the first one that Canon ever made. Like
It was
using
huge.
it.
It was so heavy.
What does SLR stand
No.
for like the non-photographers watching?
Single lens reflex, right, Bethany?
Okay.
Okay. And then the D is the digital single lens reflex. But it was a Canon D30. It was the same sizing of the camera that we have today, but just like
I remember it being a
LCD.
lot heavier.
It may have been heavier, but the technology sucked. It was like
Oh,
three.
so
Well,
there were
at the
tiny
time,
pixels, tiny
yeah,
sizes.
like
Yeah.
3.2 megapixels, and the LCD in the back was like this big and like terrible.
Alain,
But
did you ever shoot film?
no, I mean, except for what I mentioned just a few moments ago. Like, no, not for weddings.
Sorry.
No,
Okay.
no, it's okay. I mean, just yeah, that was it. So anyhow, I did that a little bit, but I didn't get into weddings until 2010 or so. In 2008, I was kind of like I had all these dumb jobs of like trying to figure
It was
out
a
life.
really hard year.
It, yeah, I'm talking like ever since I graduated, 2005, 6, 7, And I was like, I'm going to do weddings. That's what I'll do. It'll be great. Like I'll make a bunch of money. Fantastic. Then I was like, wait, like weddings, ew, brides and blah blah blah. Like, this is a terrible idea. Forget it.
Why'd you say ew?
Because I had my
It
mind
was-
at I was young and stupid, so I didn't really know what weddings were like. I'd never been to one. I just had my made up idea of like I just thought every bride was like a bridezilla. So then I attended a wedding of a friend from high school, and then she posted her pictures online, and they were really cool. They were kind of artful. I was like, wait a minute, you can take cool photographs at a wedding? And I was like, okay, maybe I'll revisit this. So I was trying to get into commercial photography a little bit. My sort of mentor guy was like, you know what, this woman keeps bugging me to shoot weddings. I don't want to do it, but you should do it. And so I applied, and it was one of the big box studios in the Chicagoland area. And she's like, well, why don't you come on, try shooting a wedding? And I was kind of pretty good at it right away. I just kind of like got it. And then I signed on with another studio as well. So I was working with two, and that was kind of how I got started. And forever grateful for that opportunity. But I did, as time progressed, kind of began to get frustrated with the impersonal nature of it. It's very low cost. It's it's kind of like the Costco wedding photography sort of, and it works for some people.
When you say big box, it's like you call a number and they say, correct me
You
if I'm
don't need
wrong,
a
they say, we'll
photographer.
pair you with your photographer a month out or something.
Yeah,
and you don't
Not
need to
even.
choose.
Some of them have really nice meeting spaces, beautiful studios, and they have a secretary or an admin that meets with them one-on-one and shows the portfolios, but the couple does not meet their photographer until the day of the wedding.
Correct.
So-
Unless they
most
do an
of the time.
engagement session, but then that's it.
Almost no
And-
one would pay for that, though.
Okay,
For
so
the
then I
engagement
have
thing? Oh, yeah.
tons of questions for both of you, but Bethany, is it just you shooting? Do you always have a second photographer? How does that work? And then if you could talk about like your process in working with couples, and then Alain will do the same for you.
I feel like
I cram in 4 questions.
yet again. I would have answered this.
There's just so much to talk about.
differently. A year ago, I would have answered this question very differently. I think so much has changed because for me, before I had a studio space, I would usually meet people at a wine bar. We'd have a couple glasses. We get to know each other pretty well. Usually about an hour would go by like that, and we would talk about what they were looking for in their photography needs for their wedding. And so much of this job is very personal. It's really a choice of not just the right vision, the right budget, but I think even someone that you enjoy being around because they are hanging out with you for so many
That's
hours.
almost like verbatim what I tell people.
Yeah, I was trying to do the whole like Bethany Alain, but like Alain, you like to meet with your couples in person over a cocktail, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I used to. We would go to Soho House or something, but that don't happen no more.
It doesn't.
Okay, so your favorite place is Soho House. My favorite place is Restoration Hardware. Bethany, do you have a favorite place that you try to bring couples to?
It used to be Bluebird, which was the same owner as Webster's Wine Bar, because that was my favorite place ever. And sometimes
it was
closed. Bluebird's been gone for several years. But I had a studio space in Lakeview, so I would just pop wine or ask them what their favorite beers were. Basically, I'd find out ahead of time what they enjoyed drinking, and I would have it ready for them when they came, and some snacks and stuff, and we'd hang out. And it was kind of like set up almost like a little living room, but it was a lot of fun, and it also made my success rate very high for booking, because I established a great connection with people by having that face to face.
You can get comfortable.
Yeah, and as much as I do think that we're doing the best we can this year, even with a lot of requests for video calls instead of just a regular phone call, it still doesn't quite get you to that same comfortability. Like, you really don't get to break the ice and walk away. I mean, sometimes after meetings, we would be hugging goodbye, and that is not a possibility now. And it's certainly not happening from a video chat. So I feel like I'm stumbling so much more. I'm getting nervous when I talk to people. I don't have that easygoing vibe that I felt like was such a part of things for so long, because now there's this screen between us. So it's definitely very challenging.
And technologies, what's interesting is that you said there's a screen in between us, but not to get like super deep, but like when you're a photographer, there's a lens between you. Correlation. No, it's hard though. It's hard. The inquiries are not as common as last year. Like, we're in engagement season right now. And typically that's from like Thanksgiving till Valentine's Day. I've personally found, but it's just inquiries are not coming in as much, and we're not going to talk about the negative, but I empathize with you, because our job, so as a wedding planner and then as a photographer, we are so involved. I'm very involved as a planner throughout the whole planning process, but I've heard Alain say this because I've worked with him on a couple weddings, and he's like, I am with you more than any other vendor day of. And it's like, and like as a wedding planner, I'm like, no, I'm the most important vendor. But like, it's true, day of, the photographer's there all the time. Like, you are next to them.
We take them home with us.
Because
not literally. Not literally, but
you get really close with your couples.
Everyone else gets to just, put stuff away, make a couple calls, but we are literally looking at their faces on a screen for weeks afterwards.
Yeah. I would say, like, that's the one thing too. Photography and videography is the one thing that's like left over aside from the memories. It's like, I mean, it's a huge selling point. I'm biased. Yeah, I was like, I'm biased. I think I'm super valuable for the planning process, and like being the liaison and trying to make everyone's lives easier, the vendors and couples. But photography, like, I hear it from so many couples. They say, you throw the flowers out. Why do we even need flowers? And it depends on your taste, but I'm like, because they're pretty. Like, I love flowers, but I always tell them, I'm like, if you ask me, I will tell you, spend all your life savings on flowers. But it's not, then I say it's not my wedding. So to each his own. But photography, as a wedding planner, couples turn to us and they say, help us find a photographer and help us budget for it. And so I'll explain my process to help guide them. And then I'd love to see your reaction to that, both of your reaction. But a couple, they'll say, we need a photographer. Okay, what's your budget? I always start with that. They say, I don't know. Well, I look at the overall budget and we try to carve out a percentage. But then from there, I ask about their style. And I want to ask both of you, like, how you sell your style to people, like what your answer is. If a couple cold called you and they said, I haven't seen any of your work, how would you describe yourself? Do you get asked that ever? Or people checking out your work?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, that's not how it works. It's 2020. People are on Instagram. I mean,
sometimes they've been at a wedding, so they didn't necessarily. I mean, I've even talked to people that met with me before I had delivered the final wedding photos to the couple that they knew.
I don't know what this is. Is that the hand of it's from Avengers.
Thor?
It's the Avengers glove.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
I'm not cool enough to know what that is.
Cryptic messages.
Oh, this is the DJ I worked with one time. And we're friends now. Very cool. Okay. Anyways. Distraction. So if a couple doesn't have a wedding planner and they're just contacting either of you and they say, hi, we need a wedding photographer. We saw your work. Tell me about your packages. I'd imagine that's like the most common type of request.
Almost always. Both.
Yeah.
Like in the emails and written inquiries.
Yeah. Like, what are some initial questions that couples should have ready for you and expect to answer when they're calling you or emailing you guys?
Questions.
Either of you can start. Well, like, what questions do you ask them? I'd imagine, like, where's the wedding? And what time is the wedding?
Well, I'll say this. So as best I can, I try and keep clients out of their like thinking mind as much as I can, or at least maybe a little bit at first, but then I want to kind of end the call of just having them staying in like a more imaginative, like light place. I don't want to put them in a stressful spot, like asking me, what time is this? What time are you doing that? Like, is there enough time here? What about transportation? Like all kind of stuff, because it stresses people out and gets them in not the right headspace that I want them to, to sign on for photography. So, I mean, I try and keep it kind of light. What time's your ceremony? When is your like event end? And that can kind of, even from just like what time is your ceremony and knowing where things are going to be, is it going to be like in the city, or is it like, ceremony in the city and then reception in the way suburbs or something? We can kind of figure out how much, like what their days going to look like time wise and stuff like that. So some questions for them to ask us. Well, I don't know.
No, not them to ask you, but like that, so they're prepared. Yeah, I guess either way, things that they should ask you, or things that, like, I'm just thinking because most couples that we work with have not been married before, and as a planner, they're very honest with me, and I don't know if they're as honest with you guys, but they say, we don't know what we're doing. We need you to help. I think for you guys and me, there's a lot of education. For couples, especially that don't have a budget, I do full planning as well as just coordination. For full planning, I will help you with your budget. I will help dissect it. For coordination, that's kind of when the couple picks all their vendors and I help execute it. That said, I will recommend vendors. So that's where it's like, because figuring out the budget does take time, but where was I going with this? Basically, they'll say, how much should I carve out for a photographer? And it's like, like I try to get their overall budget to see what we're working with. Because there's photographers that are like $12,000 and there's photographers, a couple that are like $2,000, but usually from my experience, they're like super beginner, college, whatever. Yeah. So it's like, I don't want to throw out a number because I don't want them to simply land on a number just because I said it, because they'll literally take anything I say for what it is, which can be good, but also it's so personalized. It's like, do you value photography? Do you care? You know, like, do you just want some clicks or do you want something more artistic?
I would maybe say, like, yeah, people almost when they inquire, they say, hey, are you available for a day? Like, we're curious about packages and pricing, right? But there's other stuff I want to get into with them before getting into that. Some people, everyone comes with a different understanding of wedding photography. Some people already understand that, like, they need to consider who they're hiring instead of just like someone to snap photos. Some people might just want, that's all they care about, you know, and they might not be the right fit of the client, or they might be the kind of people that going to the big box studios will like do the trick for them.
Some photographers don't care. Like, not to cut you off, I worked with some photographer. It was 2 people from the same company. They were running late. The one guy arrived. I said, "Oh, where's so-and-so?" Because I got their contact information. I said, "Is so-and-so going to be here?" He's like, "I don't know." What? You don't know if your coworker is going to be here or not? Like
I think they might. Why would they
would
not
never happen with either of you. That would never happen with Bethany or Alain. Like,
no. So that's where the
I was
education
stuck.
comes
By the way,
in.
I did not hire this company. I was like stuck with them for coordination. But I was like, I was like, I had to take my earbuds out. Excuse me. What? By the way, I call these earbuds, but they're AirPods.
Right? Okay.
They are AirPods.
You know, I think that there's kind of a sweet spot from our side of things too, because you know, I have a company that's 12 years old, and I could easily be basing my packages on the number of years of experience. And I think there are a lot of people that have been in the market, in the wedding world, equally long as I have, and they're definitely in more of the 5 figures and up for their packages, which is pretty high. And what I have kind of decided, you know, a couple years ago when I was thinking about how I wanted to structure my business, I really think that a lot of it has to do with the client that I'm attracting based on the general price structure that I have. And I could go up higher, and I could, you know, make it more about the full experience and send all these gifts to them. And I'm sure everyone would appreciate that. But at the end of the day, the people that are spending $10,000 and up are spending a whole lot more on their wedding in general, and they're of a different style. And what I have found is my comfort zone. And I think I am attracting people that are very similar to me in our personalities and our interests. And there's a friendship that becomes part of the experience as well, in addition to just being hired for the job. And I don't really want to go up from where I'm at, because I feel like I'm still kind of tucked in this nice little spot.
We have to think about the
really
market.
like it.
Yeah.
But the market is all over the place, because you have your wedding venues, you know, nothing against the suburbs, but, you know, like a banquet hall way out in the suburbs, it's going to be very affordable. And you have your big company that just gets hired by the hour to cover their event, and that's not highly personalized. And it's so different. Then you have venues that are outrageously expensive in the heart of downtown, and, you know, bands that are $80,000, and plenty of things that are very expensive in the wedding world. Your wedding budget can add up real fast. So it just depends on you know, who you want your client to be. And I've enjoyed a couple of weddings that I've worked that had pretty huge budgets. They were beautiful, but I think some of the personal touches that are coming into play with something a little bit smaller is probably more up my alley.
It's interesting that all that stuff you said, because I also have discovered that most of my clients are like kind of similar people that we get along, and like it's and I don't know how that is. Like, I'm like
attracts like. I think.
What do you say?
Yeah.
What do you say? What attracts what?
Like attracts like. I mean, I think, you know, if you're meeting them for a cocktail at the Soho House, and you order a good bourbon, and then they order something cool too, like, you're already kind of establishing that there's.
That's true.
You run in the same circles, and maybe that's even what they're tapping into when they look at your photos, that there's something that really strikes them because they identify with you.
He could be.
I feel like I always tell my couples, and I feel like you two probably say something similar during the initial consultation. I tell them, not only are you choosing to work with me, but I need to think about, I'm working with you for a year. Like, do I want you in my life for a year? Like, do I want
I've
you
luckily I haven't
texting
had
or
anyone
calling? I don't
I've
know.
had to turn away yet. I haven't had any clients that be like, I should not work with you. Has that happened to you, Bethany?
A long time ago, I definitely have had a couple where I should have seen all the red flags, and I never really felt like it was going to be the right fit. And they would tell me over and over again that they loved how creative I was and my style, but I could tell they really wanted someone so much more classic and traditional, which wasn't me. And I've always regretted it if I have stuck with them and then they weren't 100%, 200% happy with their photos. Luckily, that hasn't happened in a long time. And in fact, several years ago, when there was a couple kind of in that situation, they made the decision for me, and they ended up after their engagement session canceling and going with another photographer. And of course, through Facebook, I saw the pictures pop up later, and it just hit me, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Now I know why, because it wasn't that we didn't like each other. It just we had a totally different idea of what the end result should be, and they wanted someone to come in and make them look larger than life, like the cover of a fashion magazine, with very little substance to work with. And I was just trying to pull out the substance that was there and just work with the genuine. And they didn't want it. They wanted, whistles and, I don't know, confetti. And I saw a couple of the photos pop up through the photographer, the company that they hired, who I was very familiar with. And they were gorgeous pictures, but I was like, oh my God.
It just wasn't your style.
How did they make them look like that? Because I'm just trying to like do all these authentic things, and it was like pulling teeth. And then I guess they just figured out how to, get the right results with any couple, that they could just really polish them up, which was really impressive. And I'm glad it worked out. I'm so glad, because it wasn't meant to be for us, but they got exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
I tried to force myself on a couple, basically. Like, we weren't 100% vibing, and they're like, oh, I want more of this. And I even put together a whole PowerPoint presentation for them, which I usually don't do. Usually just Instagram and the website, and just talking usually does well enough. But they really wanted something a bit more than what I had previously done in terms of wow factors. And it ended up being one of the most, at the end of the day, the couple was like so happy. They were hugging me. But there are a couple times where I was like, this is not enjoyable. And shame on me for like forcing the situation. I really really sold myself. And normally, like, normally it's like they're referred from someone, or they see previous work, like photos from work that I've done, and they're like, yes, like, great, and we'll talk. And it's like, but with this couple, I had to have like 3 separate meetings with them. It was really like, I just wanted them, you know what I mean? I'm not going to give away details, but because then it'd be obvious of who they were. But at the end of the day, I was like, I don't know. In hindsight, I learned to not, what do they say? Like, put the round peg in the square hole or whatever. Try to force something.
Yes.
Yeah.
But super quick question. I pulled it up for a second and then I removed it. But what are your favorite locations to shoot in the city? Do you have favorite venues or getting ready locations, photo tours?
Alain?
Actually, something that comes to mind like right away that I really can't shake is LaSalle and Adams. Just because it's just, I don't know, it's architectural. The light is almost always good in there, because unless it's like noon and like the sun's like right overhead, it'll be to the side enough that you will have shadow light. And there's just lots of options you can do there, and you can shoot long and you blur out the background. You can shoot wide and get the lines of the street and then everything. There's also little alleys that, everything I do is with myself and another photographer, or we send out 2 photographers, so one can take all the guys, one can take all the girls. It's also a good spot for a first look. Like if, especially, so I have some clients in 2022 who are getting ready to JW Marriott, which is right there.
Yeah.
And so if it's a nice day outside, just go outside and do the first look right in the middle of the street and playing traffic, which I just think is fun to do.
Do you prefer outdoor versus indoor then?
Yeah, almost. I mean, almost always. Yeah.
How about you, Bethany? Do you prefer outdoor or indoor shooting?
I mean, depending on conditions, of course.
Yeah, it really depends. I think, I mean, obviously being outside and seeing our beautiful city is fantastic. And there is no shortage of, there's just so many places to go, and the architecture is gorgeous and the waterfront's beautiful. Skyline's great. But it is very weather dependent, because I've also been at, the Adler Planetarium with that stellar view of the city on a super windy day in the middle of the day with the sun beating down on us, and the bride's hair was destroyed in less than 5 minutes, ruined after all that time spent getting ready. So it really just depends. But one of my favorite things to do, sadly, has not been a part of this year as much as just finding new cool bars and restaurants and heading there kind of right around the time that they're opening. So they're just still setting up for the night and getting some great pictures in their spaces that are so curated and really lovely. I absolutely love doing that with engagement sessions. Plus it puts a little alcohol in our system to get things started. And for weddings, funny enough, I've had a ton of winter weddings over the years, which has required me to be very creative with location choices, because outside is really like limited to 10 minutes before people have red ears, red noses, runny noses. And we've done things like this. They're not there anymore, but there was a really cool place on Fulton called the Betty. And I had a couple, I gave them the idea.
Oh, I remember the Betty.
Somebody did this with Scofflaw too. I've given both of these couples this idea for winter weddings. They basically contacted them and bought a whole round of drinks for their whole wedding party before we went a few days ahead of time. And so the bartender had already made everything. It was ready to go. We weren't stressing them out by coming in with an entourage of people. And we got to take pictures in their beautiful space. Scofflaw was a little bit more crowded because that place is pretty small, but the Betty was so beautiful and had this great library wall with all these cool accessories and this big pink velvet sofa, and they were passing around trays of champagne that the bride and groom had already paid for. The wedding party loved us because we went out for drinks instead of just dragging them all over the city. And the pictures turned out great, and I couldn't recommend it more. And plus we're giving back to our local businesses.
Yeah, so drink alcohol during your wedding photos basically is like the moral of the story. It gets so cold. That's the thing. Like, I feel so, I've had this conversation with Alain. He says he's used to it. You probably are too, Bethany. I just, like, it's so cold. Like, you guys go out for like an hour or two around town, and these poor bridesmaids, I feel bad for them. They're wearing like nothing usually, unless they have like a fur.
Winter weddings are tough.
Yes, I'm talking about winter weddings.
I just had this one memory one time, and of shooting. It must have been January, February, by Adler Planetarium. I can't impress on you how effing cold it was. It was just, I think everyone lasted for like 40 seconds out of the party bus, snappy, snap, snap, back in the party bus. It was just banana. I mean, anytime you are by the lake, it's at least 10 degrees colder. I don't care what the time of year it is, even if it's like the summer, but it's always colder, and especially on a winter day. Oh my gosh.
I learned the hard way. I had a couple that wanted to go there for a December wedding, and it was a beautiful snowy day, as far as like winter weather goes. But I wasn't even smart enough to realize that it would be a complete whiteout from there. So we get there, and all you can see is white. You can't see the city.
You couldn't see the city, but you could see like you could see like your couple, right? Like, was it like?
Yeah, but there's no skyline.
You could have done that in any location, in any area that was open without too much shade, or like we could have been in the snow taking pictures anywhere. We didn't need to take our transportation all the way over there. And the funniest part is the bride and her bridesmaids were all from Trinidad, and so here we are in this.
And they're so used to being warm. Oh my God!
It was so cold, and it was snowing like crazy. It turned out beautiful, and this bride was a genius because she had her hair and makeup crew either stay or come back. So when we got back from photos, they all like rushed upstairs, totally drenched, and fixed themselves and were magically made new.
That's what a tip for brides to keep your hair and makeup around and have them meet you after that, because that's happened to me several times and lifesaver. I can't believe this, but the hour's almost up.
Yeah,
so
it really went by fast.
I know we had a lot
That's
to
crazy.
talk about. We'll go through. I'd love to have you both on again. Maybe even more people. Who knows? There's so many things to talk about when it comes to weddings, but I haven't even shown any of your work. So what I'm going to do, Bethany, I'm going to show your work. If you can just verbalize like how people can contact you, I'd assume is emailing best.
Sure. Bethany at Maypole Studios. My Instagram is probably more populated than anything at this point because I'm the worst blogger. But yeah, my handle is Maypole Studios. So I would highly recommend checking out work there, and anyone can message me through any of the usual channels.
Okay. Yeah, I totally wanted to go through like all these. I love these. So I'm just clicking through Bethany's pictures here.
This is a winter
where's
wedding.
this?
We were curling at Kaiser Tiger.
Cool. Did they have their reception there, or did they just pop over?
No, we just stopped there for a beer and to take some fun photos. This is the Garfield Park Conservatory.
Gorgeous.
That's good all year round.
Love. Okay, this is inappropriate of me to say, but I like their butt on the right.
Her underwear
nice
line
butt.
was pretty visible, but I think she actually knew it. She was intentionally showing it off. So
I'm such a weirdo. I look at people's butts.
You keep going back to the butt.
Cool. This is cool. Where's this?
This is in the West Loop. It's actually on an alley where all their trash cans are. So you have to move all the trash cans out of the way in order to make this possible. But it is really gorgeous for the color.
Where is that?
It's in Peoria. I think it's still there, but it looks really gross.
Peoria and Randolph?
Yeah, and then once you pull everything away, you're like, wow, this is actually a beautiful backdrop. So that's
cool. Is that the couple there?
Yeah, so Harrison's dad actually had an ice cream truck when he was growing up. So when we saw this guy by Millennium Park when we were taking pictures, we actually stopped for some pictures, and they ended up sitting down by the edge of the truck underneath all of the signage as well, because it actually was kind of a throwback to something from his childhood.
Aww. I have to note that Bethany sent me over 200 pictures to share. I was like, I don't even know how to scale down. Are these bubbles? That's really pretty.
Yeah, they're kind of cheesy and they've been around forever, but they still make for really cool pictures. And they don't hurt the environment.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is cool. What does this say? Don't panic.
Mm-hmm.
I want that every bride, every groom, don't panic.
I agree. Panic.
Just keep it moving. Don't cancel your wedding.
And they were all about having
I'm excited
fun.
for next year.
In fact, their reception was at Pequod's Pizza, which
really
was delicious.
I am hungry now. Okay, Alain. Oh,
that's
really quickly, Alain, I'm going to go through some of yours too.
Nice.
This is cute. Did she have weddings at her reception, or was this just for this picture?
Did she have balloons at her reception?
Yeah, like did she grab those from the venue? Or
I think she had those just for doing pictures.
Our photographer friend chimed in. What kind of Instagram filters do you use? Haha.
Okay, I know this is going to happen. Fine. This is a kind of an old photo that I was in a phase of like heavily
Photoshop action
corrected, like not corrected, like color shifting
that's cool.
pictures.
That's cool.
That was a cool picture.
Who did that?
I can see your traces of you. I see your arm.
It's not me.
Oh.
It was a groomsman who was excited to do that all day long. He was just waiting for his opportunity. So I didn't really do much for this picture. I put the camera on a tripod and they clicked the button and it stayed open. It was like a 10-second exposure. Oh yeah, that was a nice picture. That's by I
think you I saw another one. You like the fields.
Yeah, that couple that was actually a really special wedding. It's a long story, but like her dad was not well, so she had to have a wedding real quick. So it was like a secret. That was like kind of her backyard, like beyond, like just in front of, behind me was like a fence that was like bent into their yard. So she had that wedding at her home.
I feel bad. I'm like throwing your pictures at the
those
very end of
guys.
this podcast.
This one makes
We could
me
talk
Those
more.
guys, those wise guys. Yeah,
This
Jonathan
location
and
makes
Brian.
me a little sad, though.
Well,
Palmer House, right?
someone's got to buy that place. It's not just going to disappear. I
It can't.
I grabbed this picture because this brings me hope for next year of
I love
big
this
groups.
location too.
Yeah, that was a
South
cool.
Shore Cultural Center is the best. It's so pretty.
Where is this?
Cool.
This is where the Obamas
South
got
Shore.
married. South Shore Cultural Center.
Correct.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
It's just so bright. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share. Okay, this is a picture of me.
Yay!
Self-promote.
Yeah.
And then this is a close up.
That was really cool. Yeah.
And then
I love that.
that's
Oh,
like
that's a
such
great
a
room,
squad
too.
photo. That's
Yeah,
Blackstone.
Yeah,
That was a cool room.
it's underutilized.
Yeah, totally. Oh, look at
I
that.
didn't take that picture.
I was like, I didn't take
Oh,
that. I didn't take that.
Well, guys, it is the top of the hour. I have to cut us off, but thanks for being on the show. It was
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
We'll have to do it again because
We
I feel
will.
like we just skimmed the surface. Like you both have so many great pictures. I would have loved to share more. And maybe next show can be like racier, like controversial things or something. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Planting the seed. But you two have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon.
Definitely.
Cool.
Good. Thank
Okay. All right. For those tuning in, please join us next week, same time, same place. We're going to be going live at 7 p.m. Central on our Facebook page, Weddings a la Mode. You can see right there how to spell it. Okay. It is tricky trying to figure out which way. But we hope that, I still have Bethany's info, and I meant to share Alain's, so I'm going to share Alain's too. So at the bottom, you can see where you can reach either of them. They're both wonderful photographers. And yeah, see you guys next week. We will talk to you soon. Bye.